It's Julia here, and today I thought I was going to share some inspiration that I got, and hopefully I can push it on to you, and the inspiration chain will just continue on forever. So, the inspiration that I got was from this scrapbook page by Paige Evans. She is an amazing scrapbook artist, and she made this using one of her papers from her new collection, where she cut around the different florals and leaves, bent them up, and she got this really cool texture on her page. Now, Paige Evans, she is widely known in the scrapbooking community for being very innovative and using texture, but in a very small height kind of way, which is very inspiring. And as a fellow scrapbooker, I'm continuously very inspired by her. But when I saw this page, I was like, I want to do something like that, but in a sketchbook, and I want to paint flowers. So I was just feeling so inspired, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to put on the camera. I haven't filmed any paint with me or sketchbook or journal play in a very long time, and I just felt so inspired. So I felt so sure of the steps that I was going to take. So here we are. So I started my little journey here in this sketchbook, and the sketchbook I'm using, it is 8x8, and it's from Artisa with watercolor paper. Now I will admit I am a total snob when it comes to paper, and I'm not even ashamed of it anymore. That is just the way it is. I love trying out new paper. That is why I got this book. What I like about this, we can start there. What I like about this journal is the size. I really like the size of it. And I like that I can go in with watercolor. Now, is it the best paper? No, it's not. But for a journal, I think it's good enough. But what I have a problem with it is the fact that they say that you can use it on both sides, and the both sides do not react in a similar way, and I find it very annoying that they would advertise it as such. But if they would say one side of it is watercolor paper that will take watercolor in a good way, and then the other can take, I don't know, light watercolor? Yeah. Anyway, I am on the watercolor, so the cold press textured side, and I just want to make that clear. And I'm using my watercolors here, so we have a pretty big mix of colors. So most of them are just reference paints for me that I've put in this palette. So when I'm mixing paints or deciding on what colors to make next, I know how the different pigments look once they're in a paint, and that makes it easier for me to mix them. But the big pink flowers, that is Alma, and it's one of my favorite paints that I've made, and it's a sort of a dusty peachy color, and I love that for flowers, and especially for backgrounds. I can paint a whole page of a journal and then go in over that, and I really like the warmth the page gets using this color. So so what I did was I went in and I painted lots of flowers and lots of leaves. So when I did that, I tried to keep in mind where I placed the flowers, because I knew that what I wanted with this page was to do that technique where you cut around the flowers. So I needed to have space to do that, and I also needed shapes that were fairly easy to do this with. And now I am pretty okay with a with a craft knife, but still, this is a thicker piece of paper, and yeah, so I'm just trying to keep that in mind as I was going along. Now what I'm doing before I'm starting that is I have my base here, I have my flowers, and I know where everything are. So I'm going in and I'm just adding more depth to the flowers. I know that I want to go in later on with some metallic paints or glitter paints, but I still want to have a little bit more dimension to the flowers and separate, because right now they are just like really uneven bumps everywhere. So I really want to just like clearly show myself like where are the leaves and how are they formed on these flowers. So that is what I'm doing, and I'm trying to use the paint that I used as the base color and just making it a little bit darker. So for example, here I'm using Alma, and then I'm going in with a little bit of Ester. And Ester is a color that is coming February 1st, and that is a very rich magenta color. And I just wanted to make it a little bit darker so that you can clearly see where the flower petals are closer to you, and then where they are more in the shadow. And also adding a little bit of texture to the petals so they don't just look flat, but they have a little bit of texture or vininess without getting too realistic, because this exercise or this page is not really about getting perfect looking flowers, but I mean, I still want them to look good. So that is what I'm doing. I'm trying to create some shadows and highlights using this painting, but using the brush in a very loose way, which is a lot harder for me than I want it to be, but you know, practice and perfect and everything like that. So that is what I'm doing, and just going in through the different flowers and creating a little bit more so that they don't just disappear because they don't have enough contrast for the eye to look at. So like I said, this page, or this spread I should say, was inspired by Paige Evans, and she's a scrapbooker and she makes pages with paper, but she makes them for memory keeping. And what I find is really fun when you take inspiration from somebody or something that is not directly related to what you yourself is doing, is that the inspiration takes on a whole new life on its own, and I feel like you have a little bit more freedom to interpret that inspiration that you get the way you want it to. I can sometimes find that when I look at a picture of a rabbit, I was like, oh, I really like how that is looking, and oh, I want to paint a rabbit, and then I can get a bit, well, I can't actually do it because I'm not very good at that, and it doesn't really end up looking like that, and you sort of get a little bit downhearted because your result of the inspiration is too close to the original inspiration. And I find that when you switch gears, you can never compare the result because they're two completely different things. So the victory or the failure is so hard to decide, but I find it very, very fun to do this. Another thing I find very fun is working with my metallic paints, obviously, which is sort of why I started making them. So here I go in with some of my paints that I've made, and I'm starting with Britta, which is a sort of a rosy beige, I would say, and it's definitely one of my favorites. I find it really fun, or interesting I should say, when I put my colors out for others to buy and I see what colors people are buying, and sometimes like this is my favorite and it's sold right away, and then it's like some of them and nobody is buying it, and I was like, this is the prettiest color I've ever made. So yeah, I think Britta is one of those. It's a color that not very many likes, and I think that it is that when you see it in person, it's so pretty, but I find it hard to get that through on a photograph. And that's just the way it is with metallic or pearlescent or glittery colors. It's really hard to capture the magic of them in a photo, and even on video, it's really hard. And you sort of, as a buyer, you're taking a chance getting stuff like this online with the photos, because you don't really know what you're going to get. And I try to describe them, but it's really hard. So yeah, but Brita, she's definitely a favorite of mine. I really like. But then on the other hand, like I've said before, I really like muted and a little bit dirty colors. Like my favorite color on my watercolor palette, it's the palette of dirt, you know, where you have 10 different colors mixed together and it's all just looking muddy. I love that. So we all have different points of reference, and I really like that. I mean, I like bright colors too, but there's something very, I don't know, something very special with those old looking colors, I suppose you could say. So anyway, moving on, we are talking about the Paige. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding the glitter or metallic pearlescent watercolors as texture to my Paige. And what I'm trying to do is I'm using the stronger color, especially on the pink flower. So I'm using Brita on the petals that are closer to you, and then I'm mixing a sort of pink grayish color and using that much lighter on the petals in the back. So I'm getting a little bit of a shadow effect, even though it's very, very slight. I'm then going in with Balder, and I'm also going in with Glimra here in the middle of the flower, just to get a little bit of dimension. So Balder is a yellow, and Glimra is like a light copper color. And I'm also using Balder on these yellow flowers. So I'm trying to keep as much as I can the same colors, because I want to keep the color scheme together as much as possible, but at the same time using the colors that look best on the flowers, so it won't look too weird, so that your eye won't catch on something and like that doesn't make sense. And then on the tiny leaves I'm going in with Spira, just adding like a line or two, showing sort of where the middle of the flower are, or leaf, adding a little bit more dimension again. And on the red flowers I'm going to, or reddish purple flowers, I'm going in with Ellen, because I felt like I wanted a little bit more darkness. We have a little bit of darkness in the leaves, but nothing in the flowers. So I'm taking this opportunity to add a little bit of contrast to that place. And I also know that I want to be cutting out these flowers, so I wanted them to stand out for another reason. And then on the bigger leaves I'm just trying to add a little bit more detail, adding some veins, and just having them a little bit of a moment. They are bigger, so I have the space to do that. And when this is dried, it needs to be completely dried, because we're going to manhandle this poor page. We're going to start cutting out the different shapes. So I'm going to set this page aside for it to dry, and of course I'm going to add some splatters because I love that. I don't know why, that is a scrapbooking thing, definitely, adding splatters. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to take a cutting mat, or you could take a piece of cardboard or something, just to protect the pages underneath, and then it's time to bring out the knife. And like I said, as a scrapbooker or a crafter in general, I am pretty confident with a cutting blade, but yeah, this one it was so dull before I realized it was really dull. So I was like, what is happening? Nothing is happening. So I just I'm going to snip this blade off in just a moment. And that is also a tip: if you want to do this, make sure that your blade is really sharp. If you want to avoid cutting yourself, use a sharp blade. When it's a dull blade, it's much easier to that the blade won't cut in the page, it will skip or do something like that. And so yeah, use a sharp blade. And I like these break blade knives, they can just break away the tip of it. I find that they are very, very nice to work with. So I'm just going to go around the whole page except the tiny purpley flowers, and I'm not going to cut up everything, but I'm going to cut up a lot, but not cut out anything. So I'm making sure that I have a space where the element is still attached to the page. And then when I have cut up something, I make sure that I am right away lifting it up and getting that sort of a bend into the paper. So I hope you can get the idea here, like that. So it's above the page, but it's still attached to the page. So that is what we are just going to do. And on these more yellow flowers, I don't cut out every single one, I just cut out a few. And I found that even though I don't cut up everything, I still get a lot of dimension in the page. So that is what we're doing. And yeah, it took a lot of time, I'm not going to lie. I think I worked on this like 1 or 2 days maybe, and but it was really fun, and just putting on something nice in the background, having something to listen to was really relaxing, and just I really enjoyed myself. So yeah, so here you can see how it's looking right now, and I love how this is looking. I just, that is so cool. But I'm not completely done yet. So the last thing I wanted to do was inspired by Paige, of course. She put a different color underneath her, and I was like, okay, what I'm going to do. So I decided to bring out my Nuvo embellishment mousse, and this one is in sea spray green, which is a metallic sort of sea spray green, I suppose. Just on a palette knife, and I smear that all over the page. So, and then I'm just going to take like a paper clip and clip the two pages together. So when I come to this page, this is the color that will sort of shine through. And I wanted a darker color without it being too dark, because I don't have any very dark elements on it, and I felt like if I was using black or something, that contrast might be too high for the flowers. But I still felt like this was close enough in value to the others, but still adding a bit of contrast. So yeah, and then I just put that on the other page too, because I had put a lot of green paint on it. So so I have it like as a spread. And yeah, that is about it. I am so very happy with this page and how the inspiration sort of emerged. I hope you have liked this page too, and that you have gotten some inspiration and whatever that may be from this, and I hope to see you soon.